President and Vice President of the India Islamic Cultural Center, other dignitaries present, ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by thanking you for inviting me to deliver the third memorial lecture on Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. I had the privilege of working with Dr. Kalam ji when he was scientific advisor to the Raksha Mantri, and I was a joint secretary in the Ministry of Defense. I am therefore particularly pleased to be invited on this occasion to deliver this memorial lecture because, as I said, I had the privilege of working with him personally and knowing him before he became the President of India and the Bharat Ratna was conferred on him. The Islamic Center is doing great service to the nation by preserving the legacy of one of India's greatest citizens, Dr. Kalam, through his lecture on his birth anniversary, the 15th of October, which was only yesterday. In many respects, by honoring Dr. Kalam, we pay tribute to India's great tradition of diversity and cooperation. He was one such outstanding individual who embodied these fine traits in his own persona. And this apart from the fact that he was one of India's leading defense scientists. He spearheaded our nation's missile program, among so many other achievements. I want to recall, and if I may, share with you a personal story. I had just been appointed Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Defense after having served in the Ministry of External Affairs, from where I came on deputation. Dr. Kalam was already a legend even when he was scientific advisor to the Raksha Mantri. And someone must have told him that there is a new Joint Secretary who has come from the Foreign Service to the Defense Ministry. So Kalam Saab had a penchant for blunt speaking. He also had a sense of humor. So when I first met him in the corridors of the Defense Ministry, so when he came, I bowed and raised my hands in respect. So he smiled and he said, "So you have come to join the import lobby." So I was very taken aback. I protested, but it was a conversation in the corridor. But when I recovered from that remark, I sought a meeting, which I had to, as part of my calls after I called on the Defense Minister, Defense Secretary, Defense Minister, and the special scientific advisor. So I went to him and said, "Sir, I have come to call on you, but I also have come to register, if I may be allowed, my sense of unease that you said I have come to join the import lobby." So then he joked and told me, "No, you see, what has happened is the Defense Ministry has two parts. It has the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Defense Production." He said all the time the Ministry of Defense echoes the views of the service headquarters who are always in a hurry and they want quick imports to take place. So he said, I jokingly described the joint secretaries there. By the way, I joined as Joint Secretary Navy. I was the first Foreign Service officer to be given that prestigious position of dealing with the service arm. So I understood, I was at ease. And he said the defense production joint secretaries are always pushing for, indigenous production. So I couldn't resist my the opportunity I had got, I said maybe the Defense Ministry, Joint Secretaries, Joint Secretary Air, Joint Secretary Navy, and the other Joint Secretaries reflect the anxiety of the services, the Army, Air Force, and Navy, that if defense production, the domestic production projects, and we had one or two big items which were getting delayed, get delayed. He said, no, you're absolutely right. But after that conversation, in which he put me at ease, I had the privilege of working with him very closely on several projects, including when I was Joint Secretary PNC later. And then, of course, when I went out as an ambassador, I had the privilege of receiving him on a state visit when he was already head of state and President of India. Coming back to Dr. Kalam, I frankly cannot think of too many other individuals in this country. There are many, but the list is not that long, who have received the admiration, respect, and love that Dr. Kalam has deservedly received and continues to receive even today. He was a humble man. He achieved great professional successes that helped the nation chart its course in the 21st century. At the same time, his personal story of integrity, very high intellectual achievement, and charm influenced the lives of so many Indians directly and indirectly. Embodying the idea of India, he was a role model for the world. He represented the multitudes that encompass the diversity of this great nation. He was a devout Muslim, but he was also deeply spiritual and promoted interfaith dialogue and syncretism. He was a visionary scientist who developed cutting-edge satellite technology, but also advocated for development in rural areas. He was India's missile man, who enhanced India's space and defense capabilities, but also dedicated his life towards furthering peace. And I think more significantly, he was the people's president who left an indelible mark on our citizens through his enduring passion and commitment for a better world and a better India first. I clearly recall that his addresses to the nation as president, he aligned himself to unifying causes that motivated and empowered India's citizens. Even after his term, he contributed significantly to our development agenda as a statesman through his advocacy for better infrastructure and greater access to healthcare. He inspired millions of young Indian students towards national service through his "What Can I Give" moment. On a personal level, I can recall many fond memories of interacting with him. During those interactions, what struck me most was his immense knowledge as well as relentless curiosity about things, whether it was on issues relating to foreign policy or spirituality. He was always ready for a discussion. I remember when I called on him, when he was the president and I was ambassador of India to Brazil, and President Lula, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, was scheduled to visit India, and I had gone along with the Secretary of the Ministry of External Affairs for the customary briefing of the President before an incoming state visit. We got into a conversation on poverty alleviation, and he asked me why the Brazilian policy of Bolsa Familia, which the Brazilians had launched in 2003, and which also earned the admiration of the World Bank, could be a replicable model in India. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Bolsa Familia program, it was a social welfare program which provided financial aid to poor Brazilian families who in return were required to send their children to school and get them vaccinated to continue to receive direct cash transfers. If the children exceed the total number of days when students are permitted to be absent from school, they dropped out of the program and the funds were suspended. And wherever required, the government gave free tuition to children who could not go to school. More than 13.8 million families were covered under this policy and received almost a fifth of the minimum wage as direct cash transfer. Like any social welfare policy program, it had its admirers and it also had a few critics. The policy, however, proved to be a great success for ending hunger and improving education and healthcare. It had a positive effect on short-term poverty alleviation through direct cash transfers and long-term poverty by increasing human capital and literacy in the Brazilian society. This was a conversation which took place, if I remember correctly, Bolsa Familia was launched in 2003, and I was ambassador to Brazil from 2006 to 2008. So this must have been during President Lusa's visit to India, must have been 2006 or 7, I think 2006. I can say with a great sense of professional satisfaction and pride that the Modi government, guided by the philosophy of Antyodaya se Sarvodaya, has gone a step further by delivering direct cash transfers and subsidies for food, cooking gas, ration, and displacement and disaster relief, among other social benefits, using the shared digital infrastructure of JAM, Jan Aadhaar, Aadhaar, and Mobile. This government has revolutionized social welfare programs by creating a leakage-free mechanism that promotes delivery to the needy. More than rupees 1.78 lakh crores have been saved by adopting the direct transfer model, and the efficacy of this scheme was realized during the COVID-19 pandemic, when millions of Indians benefited from the government's proactive interventions. The last year and a half or more have not been easy for the country. We went into a total lockdown on March 25th, 2020, in order to battle the virus, the enemy. During that period, the time was spent to provide much needed attention to our healthcare system. When we went into a lockdown, we had to import 1,900 tons of medical supplies from outside, masks, N95 masks, ventilators, PPE kits. Today, one can say with a degree of satisfaction that in a few days' time, I think by another 4 or 5 days, we will be crossing the 1 billion or 100 crore vaccine doses would have been administered. I reflect back on some of the statements which many of my friends in the political firmament had made. Why are you giving clearance for one of the domestic manufacturers? What we had given was emergency authorization use. So one of them, who happened to be a student of mine, I told him, you know, you're reasonably proficient in the English language. Please read what has been done. It's emergency authorization use. When you're faced with the prospects of a pandemic, you can't go to your neighborhood chemist and buy a vaccine off the shelf. There were very few vaccine manufacturers in the world, and those that were manufacturing would naturally cater to their own populations in the first instance. And therefore, it is a great degree of humility and satisfaction, I can say, that one of the manufacturers who was commercially licensed to manufacture a vaccine developed by AstraZeneca, for which the research was done at Oxford, Serum Institute and the other, Bharat Biotech, rose to the occasion, and we are rapidly moving towards a situation where we would have crossed 100 crore vaccine doses in a few days' time, and then we will move to a situation in which the entire population has had the benefit of both doses. One can never afford to be complacent, because the pandemic, the virus, is the enemy, and we are fighting a hidden enemy. But as I was in another public function an hour ago when we released a vaccine anthem sung by one of our artists, Kailash Kherji, Padma Shri, and you will all be hearing it. And vaccination is the best insurance we can do. Things may still go wrong, but when you have an entire nation in the process of being vaccinated, then you have the confidence with which economic activity can be fully. I'm Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas. I can tell you, prior to COVID, we had a certain consumption of petrol, certain consumption of diesel. Today, we are 10 to 15% higher than the pre-COVID consumption, and we are of petrol and about 6 to 10% higher on the diesel consumption. Of course, I will not go into the issue of prices, because I think the levers for that are in other people's hands, but we will continue to work towards price stability. As I mentioned, I had the privilege of working with Dr. Kalam during the period of 1997 to 99. This was an extremely pivotal period for India's defense sector. It was also a period that would establish a prominent place for India in the global geopolitical landscape and would help influence our foreign policy in the subsequent decade. During this period, the government of India was preparing for the Pokhran II tests, which were eventually conducted under the joint scientific supervision of Dr. Kalam in May 1998, when he was a scientific advisor to the Raksha Mantri at that point of time. Of the many hats or turbans that I have had to wear in my life as a civil servant and as a public servant, the experience of working in the Ministry of Defense with Dr. Kalam was a highlight. I still remember the clarity of leadership that he brought to the table and how deftly he handled stakeholders from the political, scientific, and administrative streams in making Operation Shakti a success. On a lighter note, I can freely admit to playing a small role in facilitating discussions at that point of time. I ended up, when I was Joint Secretary, Policy and Coordination, as the interpreter in Shri Mulayam Singh Yadav ji's morning meetings. He used to take a meeting every Monday morning, which used to bring in the service chiefs, cabinet secretary, principal secretary to the Prime Minister, and of course Dr. Kalam and the Defense Secretary. I say this in a positive, lighter vein. If Mulayam Singh ji and Dr. Kalam were in a room, I'm sure they would have had a great conversation, but the fact was Dr. Kalam spoke no Hindi, and Mulayam Singh ji, I'm sure, spoke very good English, but he chose to use Hindi in turn. So the Defense Secretary, Shri Tapas Banerjee, who was an officer of the Haryana cadre, decided in his wisdom that I would be the interpreter in the morning as Joint Secretary Policy and Coordination. I tried to reason with him that as a member of the Indian Foreign Service, I had spent many years abroad and that my Hindi may be found to be wanting, but he would not listen to me. Now, when you are a Joint Secretary, you don't argue with what your boss tells you. And least of all, if it involves a meeting like this, I couldn't say I wouldn't do it, but I tried. And he said, don't worry, I will be sitting right behind you. If you go wrong, I will prompt you. So it was a great experience, one which I said, provided a great education to me. Because you sat with people at the cutting edge of policy making and you participated in that, actually as a note taker, because I was the junior most person present in that meeting. But I can tell you with confidence that the role that Dr. Kalam played ended up revolutionizing India's defense systems and national security. That 11th May is celebrated as the National Technology Day is a testament to what the Pokhran II tests did to direct the public consciousness towards the role of technology in the future of the country. But Dr. Kalam's contribution was not confined to the defense sector. He was instrumental in unshackling the defense sector, that's true. But his ardent support for self-sufficiency and developing indigenous technologies to strengthen our defense capabilities was a catalyst in the government reducing its dependence on the imports of defense equipment and in essence refusing to kowtow to the international diktat of the time that frequently ignored India's interests. His vision for 2020 in some ways foreshadowed and in some ways it anticipated Prime Minister Modi's Atmanirbhar path that we are on now. As head of the DRDO, he steered the development of the indigenous missile systems Agni and Prithvi. Before that, he directed the project to develop India's first satellite launch vehicle, SLV, in the 1980s. Dr. Kalam strongly endorsed India's self-sufficiency in important aspects of nation building. He laid out this vision in his India 2020 roadmap, which identified 5 areas where India had to build core competencies. And these are, as he listed them, agriculture and food processing, education and healthcare, information and communication technology, infrastructure, reliable and quality electric power, and surface transport for all parts of the country, self-reliance in critical technologies. I am very happy to share with you that in many respects we have come a long way on the roadmap that Dr. Kalam laid out for India, whether it was infrastructure creation or national security, education or space exploration. The government of India under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi ji is on the path towards self-reliance and sustainable economic growth, which is going to position India amongst the leading countries in the community of nations. Be it in the construction of houses under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, or reaching universal sanitation through the Swachh Bharat mission, or gaining energy sufficiency through the Ujjwala scheme, this government has built a strong infrastructural foundation. Through the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee RURBN Rurban mission, this government is realizing Dr. Kalam's vision of creating rural areas with urban-like infrastructure and is helping stimulate local economic development, enhance basic services, and create well-planned villages. Dr. Kalam himself did a lot to further these causes, most notable among them being education and healthcare. In the healthcare sector, he built low-cost coronary stents and computer tablets for healthcare along with Dr. Soma Raju that are widely used in the country and are hailed as shining examples of ingenuity and indigenous brilliance. He believed that education was the gateway to agency in the country and held a special affinity for the young students of the country whom he regarded as the future of a knowledge economy that India would pioneer. It is a befitting homage to him that we also celebrate 15th October as World Students' Day. And I must finally, before I conclude, recall another personal example. I was ambassador and permanent representative of India to the United Nations in Geneva. I was accredited then to the UN agencies. Dr. Kalam was on a state visit to Switzerland, but his first step was in Geneva. And I remember the ambassador in Bern and I, along with Shri S.M. Khan, who was then the press secretary to the president, we had drawn up a very elaborate program, and the program was proceeding very well. Suddenly I was called by the president and said there is an event which he wanted to have included. So I was taken a little by surprise, because most of you know that programs of presidents are not changed last minute, because you have to give notice to the security agencies, you have to mobilize people. But I said there was no question of us not respecting the president. He said he wanted a meeting with children. And all we had at that stage was about a 30 minutes or so, and we had to adjust the program. So we quickly, I asked everybody in my office, I said, who has children who can, of a school age, who can interact with the president? So we were able to get about 40, 50 children from our own mission, from some others, at short notice. And I must tell you, I sat there, and he didn't want either me or his own secretary to be anywhere around. He said, no, you guys, you can sit in the back, not with me here. And I saw his interaction with those children, and I can tell you, it's one of the most fascinating exchanges I have seen. The children clearly were mesmerized by this man, who by that time he had already a halo. He was the man who had, India was a nuclear power, India had developed indigenous missiles, he was associated with it, he had become the president of India. The children were mesmerized, but the children were not hesitant. They didn't care what the level was. They interacted with him fast and sharp. But the beauty that I saw in that interaction was, Dr. Kalam did not talk down to them. Dr. Kalam spoke to them at their level. He teased them a bit, he had a little fun with them, but the overall nature of that interaction produced something which I always cherish in my mind. And to conclude, let me say, wherever he went and whomever he spoke with, he exuded optimism and positivity. In today's environment, when many of us tend, I think without reason, to become cynical, and we start looking at and contributing to hyperpolarization, it may do all of us good to remember that Dr. Kalam, what he stood for and how he advocated it. He represented the best of India and was able to successfully bring along diverse traditions, disciplines, and peoples to carry a life story that still inspires 1.34 billion Indians. Thank you very much for this opportunity.